Self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-management are vital to being a good facilitator. And if you've never been in the role, you won't understand just how much your emotions get tugged on by the group's emotions. Even if you've been there before and you're curious about how can I get better at self-management, well, I'm going to talk about that today. And I got some fresh thoughts to share with you. I ran a cohort on self-management today with a group of other facilitators, and so I've got some tips and tricks to share with you today. And let's get into it. I'm Andrew Frazier, certified Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, change management practitioner, longtime project lead, husband and father. And I go beyond the belt to help you master facilitation so you can lead groups to their heartfelt objectives. And today's video again is on self-management. Self-management is one of those key traits, key principles that will go unsaid unless you run into someone that is of experience. It is kind of one of those undertones. You're expected as a facilitator to go into any event with this already in mind, this capability already there. And it's a vital trait of really anybody in a leadership role, as well as just in a professional environment. You're expected to be self-aware, self-regulating, and self-managing, right? But it takes on a different vibe when you talk about facilitation, because it's not just your emotions and your reactions and your speech and clarity that is at stake. It's also the groups. It's also how you self-manage is how the group is going to self-manage. And we'll talk about mirroring a little bit later on. But in order to have good self-management, you have to cultivate self-awareness. So that's a predecessor. And Daniel Goleman talks about this in his book, Emotional Intelligence. And there's 5 keys to emotional intelligence, but really I'm just going to touch on the first 2. And that is self-awareness, understanding what's going on inside you, and then self-management, which is controlling what's going on with your body, with your mind, with your emotions, and how it is projected outward to other people. And self-awareness is a predecessor, because if you don't understand what's going on inside you, how can you control it? If you ever heard the phrase "name it to tame it," that's referring to a practice of breaking down your complex emotional states into more simplified states, so that you can cultivate self-management. First you name it, then you tame it. Well, that's literally self-awareness and self-management in a simplified form. Naming it, self-awareness; taming it is self-management. And a facilitator needs to pay attention to their biases, their past situations that may cause them to react certain ways, basically triggers, if you wanted to use that word, and a myriad of other things like belief systems, what your strengths and weaknesses are. How do you typically talk? What are your proclivities? What are your personal traits? And I highly recommend, as a method of diving into your self-awareness, is just journaling. Journaling is a great tool. Ask yourself critical questions and then write it down in a journal. And journaling slows down your thought processes. It forces you to really digest what it is that's going on inside you, and you can't just skip it over. You have to come to some form of clarity in order to record it down and write it down. Our thoughts are a complex thing, and writing creates that, forces that simplification to occur. So I highly recommend journaling as a method of developing self-awareness. If you're okay with going to other people, get feedback. Ask them, how do I come across? How do you perceive me? What do you perceive as my strengths and weaknesses? It takes some humility and courage to do so, but that's another great way of understanding yourself better, so that then you can manage yourself. So once you developed and cultivated a list, good understanding of how you behave, what your tendencies are, then you can start working on managing it. And managing it looks like asking yourself again these critical questions. How am I coming across right now? What is my emotional state right now? How am I speaking? What's my body doing? Am I flailing my arms a lot? Am I unconsciously, am I shaking my head in disagreement, or am I nodding my head too much? In which case it shows I have some form of bias, or creating some form of bias within the group. And just asking yourself these questions up front and then in situation, so that you have control. And a great example is hands in pockets. I was in a lean simulation event where other green belts and black belts were helping me to develop my facilitation skills and Lean Six Sigma tool usage. And one of the first things they told me was, you got to take your hands out of your pockets. And I wasn't aware of how hands in pockets comes across to the group. I knew my hands were in my pockets, and it was a comfort thing for me. I felt like I was comfortable. I was showing that I was comfortable in front of the group, and I was casual. I wanted to send across this message that, hey, I'm with you guys. I'm one of you. I'm not stressed out. I'm doing okay. But that it actually was sending the opposite message. My hands in my pockets were telling them that I was stressed, that I was uncomfortable. And ever since then, I have not put my hands in my pockets. Like, it was such a key change for me to make and pay attention to. Do I feel the urge? Yeah, I still feel the urge, but because I know about it, and because I got that direct feedback, I can then go self-manage and keep my hands out of my pockets, use more power poses like steeple or hands in front of me, folded hands, that kind of thing, or just gesture more. And side tip, if you find that your hands are busy and that you can't really stop yourself, get something in your hand, like a pen and a pad of paper, and then it covers up the fact that you want to keep your hands busy and you have that tendency, and it just looks like you're ready to go. You've got a notepad and a pen, and then you're ready to go. So that's the little side tip for you. But I had some awareness, but the feedback that I got was key for me developing that self-awareness and being like, yeah, the aha moment. Yes, you're right. And I understand now how it's coming across. And then I could take that next step, which is self-management. So what are some tips and tricks to develop self-management in front of a group, especially when you're in a more of a crisis situation or in a high emotional situation? My first and foremost tip for you would be to breathe and regulate your emotions, regulate your responses through the act of breathing. And box breathing, if you haven't heard of box breathing, that's a 4 seconds inhale, 4 second exhale. 4 seconds inhale, pausing for 4 seconds, 4 second exhale, and then pausing for 4 seconds, and repeat. And it's an equilateral, it's a square, equal sides, because it's all 4 seconds. And that's box breathing. And breathing I've seen it all over the place, and I've tried it myself. It is the best way to help regulate your emotions and maintain and stay on top of managing yourself. Another great way is to Ask questions. When you're in the mode of, I have to ask questions, I need to ask questions, and that is the way that I am going to interact with the group, is through critical questions and deep question asking. It doesn't give you time to react. You're setting yourself up to be in in a non-biased role, an objective role of the question asker. So when somebody is starting to get really, let's say, hyper emotional, let's say, or even just angry or disappointed, then you can ask those questions. It keeps you calm, and it helps to calm them down. Facts, focusing on the facts is another way to look at it. Asking them, hey, let's just focus on the facts. Can you tell me what about that specifically contributed to this condition? Or how would you write that down? What information would you like to share from that can be written down and shared with the group, or build towards our outcomes? And that way you're getting back the agenda, you're progressing the conversation, you're keeping them out of a high emotional state, potentially, depending on how they respond. But most people will respond in a way that says, I hear you, I understand I'm getting probably too upset for this, and I need to calm down and do what you were asking me to do, which is focus on the objectives. So asking questions and focusing on the facts will help them and you to not react to what's going on. And this goes back to those triggers. If somebody is sad and you have a more of a bleeding heart type, or are more of a bleeding heart type person, and you want to console them, or you tend to console them, but you know that in a facilitation role, you cannot go do that to the degree in which you would normally do. I highly recommend acknowledging their emotions, acknowledging what's going on, because that also is a method of self-management. Is staying rational, acknowledgement, and staying rational of what's going on, naming it so that you can tame it. But it keeps you and them out of a situation which looks like a therapist and a patient, by focusing on the facts. I hear you right now, acknowledging, I hear you right now. I can see that this is potentially upsetting you. When you're ready, can you write down, or can you tell me 3 things about what is specifically bothering you about this? And approach it from that way. Get them to turn what they're doing or what's happening to them into a more of a discussion point, a bullet point, something to chew on, not something to stay in the reactive mode to, a high emotional state. So I'll end with a story. I was leading a group, and just to show you how important self-management is. I was leading a group as a young engineer, and I had all manner of people in this meeting that was supposed to show up. I had senior leadership, I had mechanics, other engineers, I had production controllers, and people that help the mechanics to schedule their work, and work leads kind of type people. And we were there to talk about a critical evolution. And I had a plan drawn up. I had my fellow engineers there, and we were ready to go. We were ready to brief our plan and then get concurrence and move on it. Well, in walked one of the production leads, and kind of dropped this bomb. He said, he came in there and he said, we're not doing that. That's unsafe. And up to that point, we had no indication that they thought this way. We had no indication that they were in disagreement, the community of mechanics and production people. And it hurt. Like, it hurt badly. And my reaction was appropriate to being hurt. I said something snarky to him because well, let me back up a little bit. He had said something snarky, so not on top of dropping the bombs, he also kind of made a snarky comment about engineers, and I didn't take that very well. I said something snarky back to him. I slammed my notebook closed. I got up from this table, which made it extra awkward was that this table was against the wall, so I had literally had to push my way against the wall past a bunch of people and shimmy my way out of this room as I exited, saying in objection, saying this meeting is over, there's no point in being here, bye. But that's what I did, and I'm not proud of it. On most of the degree, I'm not proud of it. Some of that is, standing up for yourself is an okay thing when it's done correctly. But in that moment, I did not manage that very well. I was the one in charge of that meeting, in charge of facilitating that meeting, and I broke everyone's trust as a facilitator by reacting badly. Even though somebody else had said something, somebody else was in an emotional state themselves, I didn't have to let it trigger me. I could have taken a breath. I could have paused. I could have, even though the meeting had just started, I could have said, let's do a sidebar, and pulled them aside to find out what's going on in a little more detail before bringing it back to the group. There's all kinds of alternatives. But as facilitators, we need to give ourselves the room, using just a couple of key tools, a room to respond better. And those are breathing, taking a break, acknowledgement, focusing on the facts, and stuff like that. So before you step into a room where people are going through change, it's people are complex, and they always bring their emotions with them. They don't leave them behind. So it's one room, a bunch of complex people, and they're probably going to go through some kind of change. One, change is difficult and causes emotional reactions as well. Then it behooves you to develop that self-awareness of what's going on inside you, how you best approach a group, how you should approach a group, what your beliefs and biases are in this situation, assuming you should know the topic well beforehand, and then having some tips and tricks for self-management ready to go in your back pocket so that you can interact with them as a facilitator, an objective facilitator, and move people towards their objectives and goals. You're there to progress them from current state to a future state, and then leave them with a plan to do so. Can't do that if you're joining them in their emotional highs and lows. Your credibility tanks when you start to join them in their emotional reactions. So hopefully you found this video worthwhile today. The cohort that I led this morning, they were very excited about this topic. A lot of notes, a lot of feedback on that, and it was good stuff. So I wanted to pass that on to you today while it was fresh in my mind, and go out there and do a good job facilitating. All the best.